The castle stood where the mountains seemed to touch the clouds. Travelers often saw it long before they reached it. On clear mornings, its gray towers appeared above the mist like distant cliffs carved by nature rather than built by human hands. From the valley below, the fortress looked almost impossible to reach. A narrow stone road climbed through pine forests before crossing a deep ravine on a single arched bridge, finally ending at enormous oak gates reinforced with black iron. People called it Ravenhold. Few remembered when the castle had first been built. Even in the late 13th century, it already felt ancient. Local monks believed Roman watchtowers had once stood on the same mountain. Others insisted the earliest stones were placed by forgotten kings whose names had disappeared from history centuries before. No one truly knew. But everyone agreed on one thing. Ravenhold had watched over the valley longer than anyone could remember. The valley itself was peaceful. Small villages dotted the hillsides. Farmers grew barley and rye on narrow terraces carved into the slopes. Shepherds led their flocks through alpine meadows each spring, while merchants occasionally passed along the mountain road carrying wool, salt, and wine toward distant markets. Life moved slowly there. The changing seasons mattered far more than politics. Children learned to recognize the sound of church bells echoing across the hills. Families prepared for harsh winters by storing grain inside stone barns. Every autumn brought the same familiar routine, and every spring promised another beginning. The castle simply watched. Its banners changed as different noble families inherited it. Its soldiers grew older. Its walls weathered countless storms. Yet Ravenhold always remained. On cold evenings, villagers sometimes looked toward the fortress as sunlight faded behind the peaks. The highest tower caught the last golden light of the day, glowing briefly before darkness settled across the mountains. Many believed the castle would stand forever. Perhaps it almost did. Lord Edric Ravenwood became master of Ravenhold during one unusually harsh winter. He was not a young man. Years of military campaigns had left silver streaks in his dark hair, and an old wound caused him to walk with a slight limp whenever the weather turned cold. Yet those who met him rarely noticed either. They remembered his calm voice instead. Unlike many nobles of his time, Edric never raised it. Servants respected him because he listened. Soldiers followed him because he remained beside them during difficult marches rather than watching safely from behind. Even neighboring lords admitted that he preferred negotiation over unnecessary conflict. His wife, Lady Eleanor, possessed the same quiet nature. She spent much of her time overseeing the castle's kitchens, herb gardens, and infirmary. Travelers injured while crossing the mountains often found shelter within Ravenhold's walls until they recovered. The castle earned an unusual reputation. It was known less for its strength and more for its hospitality. Every morning followed nearly the same rhythm. Before sunrise, the chapel bell called the household to prayer. The kitchens came alive soon afterward. Fresh bread baked in enormous stone ovens. Blacksmiths repaired horseshoes in the lower courtyard. Stable boys carried water from mountain springs. Messengers prepared for journeys through neighboring valleys. From the highest watchtower, guards carefully observed the winding roads below. Not because they expected invasion, simply because that had always been their duty. Routine gave the castle its heartbeat. Even children understood it. Edric's youngest son, Thomas, loved climbing the western wall whenever his tutors became distracted.
From there, he could see almost the entire valley. One afternoon, he asked his father a question. Why was Ravenhold built so high? Edric smiled. So people could see danger before danger saw them. Thomas considered the answer. And has that ever happened? His father looked toward the distant mountains. More times than I wish. Although peace had lasted several years, whispers of unrest slowly drifted through the kingdom. Merchants carried more than goods, they carried news. A border dispute had broken out far to the east. Several noble families argued over old claims of inheritance. Bands of unemployed mercenaries wandered from one province to another, searching for work. Most villagers paid little attention. Such stories often appeared and disappeared just as quickly. Edric, however, listened carefully. Experience had taught him that kingdoms rarely changed overnight. They changed quietly, one rumor at a time, one disagreement at a time, until people suddenly realized everything had become different. Late one autumn afternoon, a tired rider arrived at Ravenhold carrying the royal seal. His horse trembled from exhaustion after days on mountain roads. Edric welcomed the messenger personally. The young man accepted a bowl of hot soup before speaking. The capital requests your presence. Edric opened the parchment slowly. Its contents were surprisingly brief. A meeting of several northern lords. Attendance required immediately. No explanation followed, only the king's seal. Eleanor watched him fold the parchment. What do you think it means? I don't know, and that concerns me. 3 days later, Edric left Ravenhold with only 12 mounted guards. Before departing, he walked once around the castle walls. The wind carried the scent of approaching snow. Below, villagers prepared firewood for winter. Children laughed near the stable. Everything appeared perfectly ordinary. He hoped it would remain that way. Standing beside the great gate, Eleanor adjusted the heavy cloak around his shoulders. You'll return before the first snowfall. I intend to, she smiled. You always say that, because I always hope it's true. Thomas ran across the courtyard. When you come back, I'll have another story. Edric knelt beside him. I promise. The boy grinned. It has to be a good one. It will. Those simple words lingered longer than either of them expected.
The first snow arrived earlier than expected. By the time Lord Edric reached the capital, white covered the rooftops, the city walls, and the fields beyond them. Smoke drifted lazily from hundreds of chimneys, and the river that divided the city had already begun to freeze along its edges. Normally, the capital felt alive. Merchants filled the marketplaces with shouting voices. Blacksmiths worked from dawn until dusk. Musicians played outside taverns while children chased one another through crowded streets. This time, everything seemed quieter. Not empty, simply cautious. People spoke in lower voices. Royal guards stood at nearly every gate. Even the bells of the great cathedral sounded heavier somehow, their echoes lingering longer in the cold winter air. Edric had visited the capital many times over the years. He had never seen it like this. The meeting was held inside the old council chamber rather than the royal audience hall. That alone surprised him. The audience hall had always been used for ceremonies and public announcements. The council chamber was different, smaller, private, built for conversations few people were meant to hear. When Edric entered, 9 other lords were already waiting. Some he knew well, others he recognized only by reputation. No one smiled. Instead, each greeted him with the same polite nod that soldiers exchanged before battle. At the far end of the chamber stood Chancellor Roland, the king's oldest advisor. His beard had turned completely white, and his shoulders were slightly bent with age, yet his sharp blue eyes missed very little. When the final lord arrived, Roland quietly closed the heavy oak doors himself. Only then did he begin speaking. "My friends," he said softly, "thank you for coming." No one interrupted. "The king regrets that he cannot meet you personally." A few uneasy glances passed around the table. One noble finally asked, "Is His Majesty ill?" Roland hesitated. "He is occupied." It was an unusual answer. Too unusual. Edric noticed several men shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. The Chancellor unfolded a faded map of the northern frontier. "You've all heard rumors." Some nodded. "Most of those rumors are wrong." He placed a small wooden marker near the eastern border. But not all. Over the next hour, Roland explained the situation. There had been no invasion, no rebellion, no civil war. Instead, something slower, and in many ways more dangerous, had begun. Several powerful noble families had quietly started ignoring royal authority. Taxes meant for the crown no longer reached the capital. Local courts refused to recognize decisions made by royal judges. Private armies were growing larger every season. None of these actions alone threatened the kingdom. Together, they slowly weakened it. "It's like rot underneath a floorboard," Roland said. "Everything appears strong until someone finally steps in the wrong place." Silence followed. Edric understood exactly what he meant. One lord struck the table with his fist. "Then arrest them." Roland shook his head. If only it was so simple. Why isn't it? Because many accusations cannot yet be proven. Another noble frowned. "Then why summon us?" The old chancellor looked around the room. "Because each of you still commands loyalty." He allowed the words to settle. "The king believes difficult days are coming." No one spoke for several moments. Outside, snow continued falling beyond the narrow windows. That evening, Edric walked alone through the palace gardens. Everything lay beneath a blanket of fresh snow. Frozen fountains stood silent. Bare trees reached up into the gray sky. For the first time in many years, he felt genuinely uneasy. Not because of armies, not because of politics, because uncertainty had become impossible to measure. An enemy marching towards your walls could be seen. An enemy hidden behind polite conversations could not. The following morning, Chancellor Roland requested another private meeting. This time, only Edric was invited. The old advisor dismissed every servant before speaking. Then he locked the chamber's door. "I need your help." Edric nodded. "You have it." Roland crossed to a small wooden chest resting beneath the window. From inside, he removed a leather bundle tied with faded cord. It looked ordinary, almost disappointing, until he placed it on the table. There are documents inside. What kind? The kind men are willing to kill for. Edric studied the bundle carefully. Old parchment, wax seals, maps, several letters. Nothing appeared remarkable, yet Roland handled them with extraordinary care. What am I looking at? The history of this kingdom. The old man slowly untied the leather cord. One by one, ancient documents covered the table. Royal land grants, treaties, signed agreements between noble families dating back more than a century.
Some carried seals from kings long forgotten. Others bore corrections written in different hands over several generations. Roland rested one trembling hand on the papers. If these disappear, he paused, the truth disappears with them. Edric looked up. You believe someone intends to destroy them? I know they do. The room became completely silent. For nearly 2 hours, Roland explained what the documents revealed. Entire valleys had been transferred illegally from one family to another decades earlier. Boundaries had quietly been altered. Taxes had vanished. False copies of legal records had replaced genuine ones in several regional archives. None of it happened quickly. That was precisely why few people noticed. Corruption rarely arrived with trumpets. It preferred whispers. Edric felt the weight of each revelation growing heavier. This changes everything. Roland nodded. Exactly. The old chancellor carefully gathered the documents again. There is one more reason I summoned you. Edric waited. If anything happens to me, he slid the leather case across the table. These become your responsibility. Edric didn't move. Surely there were safer places. The royal treasury, the cathedral, the palace archives. Roland answered the question before it was spoken. They'll search all those places first. The leather case rested quietly between them. Simple, unremarkable, almost invisible. Sometimes history survived not because it was hidden in the strongest fortress, but because no one imagined it worth looking for. Edric slowly placed his hand on the worn leather. I'll protect them. Roland smiled filledly. I prayed you would say that. Neither man realized the promise made in that quiet room would soon shape the fate of Ravenhold itself and explain why, before long, its great gates would close to the world for 100 long years.
Winter tightened its grip on the kingdom with remarkable speed. By the time Lord Edric prepared to leave the capital, every road leading into the northern mountains had disappeared beneath thick snow. Merchants delayed their journeys, farmers remained close to their villages, and even experienced travelers chose to wait for clearer weather. Yet Edric refused to stay. The leather bundle Chancellor Roland had entrusted to him never left his sight. During the day, it rested inside a plain travel chest beneath spare clothing and blankets. At night, he placed it beside his bed before sleeping only lightly, waking at the smallest sound. He trusted very few people now. The kingdom suddenly felt different, not because he had seen armies marching, because he had begun noticing silence where there should have been honesty. The journey home began before sunrise. Only 8 guards accompanied him this time. Roland had suggested taking more soldiers, but Edric quietly declined. A large escort attracts attention, he had explained. I would rather look like an ordinary noble returning from court. The old chancellor understood. Sometimes the safest road was the one nobody bothered to watch. For several days, nothing unusual happened. Snow covered forests in perfect white. Frozen rivers sparkled beneath pale winter sunlight. Small monasteries welcomed travelers with warm soup and fresh bread. Every evening, Edric wrote a short letter to Eleanor, though he knew most would not reach Ravenhold until weeks later. He described the mountains, the weather, the kindness of strangers. He deliberately avoided mentioning the leather bundle. Some knowledge became dangerous the moment it was written down. The 4th evening, the weather changed. Dark clouds rolled across the mountains long before sunset. The wind arrived first, cold, sharp, restless. It swept through the pine forests with a low sound that almost resembled distant voices.
By nightfall, heavy snow had begun falling once again. The travelers sought shelter inside a roadside monastery built centuries earlier beside the old mountain road. The monks welcomed them without question. Hospitality had always been part of their calling. That evening, Edric shared supper with the monastery's abbot. The elderly monk had lived in those mountains for nearly 50 years. He knew every road, every bridge, every dangerous pass. As they finished their meal, the abbot quietly asked, "May I offer some advice?" "Of course." "Do not take the eastern pass tomorrow." Edric looked surprised. "Why?" "The snow has become unpredictable." "An avalanche?" The old monk slowly shook his head. "I fear something else." "What do you mean?" The abbot hesitated. "For the past week, strange riders have been seen using that road." Edric remained calm. "Bandits?" "I don't know. They never steal. They never speak. They simply appear, watch travelers from a distance, and disappear." One of Edric's captains laughed softly. Perhaps frightened pilgrims imagined ghosts. The abbot politely smiled. "I've lived long enough not to believe every story." He looked directly at Edric. "But I've also lived long enough to know when stories begin repeating themselves." The room became quiet. Outside, snow struck the monastery's windows. Edric thanked the old monk for his warning. Still, something about the conversation stayed with him long after everyone retired for the night. Morning arrived beneath a sky as white as the ground itself. Visibility was poor. The world seemed reduced to snow, stone, and silence. Following the abbot's advice, Edric chose the western mountain road instead. It was longer, narrower, far less traveled, yet it avoided the eastern pass entirely. For several hours, the decision appeared wise. The trail remained empty, no merchants, no riders, no sign of danger. Only towering pine trees and untouched snow stretching endlessly across the mountains. Near midday, one of the guards quietly raised his hand. "My lord." Edric turned. "What is it?" The soldier pointed toward a distant ridge. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then Edric saw them. Tiny dark figures standing perfectly still against the white mountainside. Horsemen. Perhaps 6, perhaps 8. Too far away to identify. None moved. None approached. They simply watched. One captain laughed softly. Perhaps frightened pilgrims imagined ghosts. The abbot politely smiled. "I've lived long enough not to believe every story." He looked directly at Edric. "But I've also lived long enough to know when stories begin repeating themselves." The room became quiet. Outside, snow struck the monastery's windows. Edric thanked the old monk for his warning. Still, something about the conversation stayed with him long after everyone retired for the night. Near midday, the road descended toward a frozen river. A small stone bridge crossed the narrow gorge. Edric stopped for a moment, allowing the horses to drink where the current still flowed beneath broken ice. Everything appeared peaceful, almost too peaceful. The forest seemed strangely quiet. No birds, no distant animals, only the sound of water beneath the bridge. He looked around slowly. Years spent leading soldiers had taught him something valuable. Nature often noticed danger before people did. Suddenly, a raven burst from the trees. Its sharp cry echoed across the valley. Almost immediately, another answered farther away, then another. Within seconds, dozens of ravens filled the air above the forest. The horses became restless. One guard tightened his grip on the reins. "I don't like this." Neither did Edric. He quietly reached for his sword. Not because he expected battle, because instinct had spoken before reason could. A moment later, the first arrow struck the wooden railing of the bridge. No one saw where it came from. The second buried itself in the snow only a few feet away. The third narrowly missed one of the horses. "Move!" Edric shouted. His guards immediately formed around him as the horses surged forward across the bridge. But something felt wrong. The attackers weren't trying to kill them, not yet. It was as though someone wanted only one thing: to stop Lord Edric before he reached Ravenhold. And deep inside his travel chest, wrapped in plain leather, beneath ordinary blankets, lay the quiet secret that explained exactly why.
The horses galloped through the snow without waiting for another command. No one looked back. The narrow mountain road twisted between towering pines, and for several long moments the only sounds were pounding hooves, rattling harnesses, and the cold wind rushing through the trees. Edric kept one hand firmly on the reins, while the other rested near the hilt of his sword. He had fought enough battles to recognize something unusual. Whoever had fired those arrows had been skilled, yet every shot had missed by just enough. Too close to be an accident, too careful to be an attempt at murder. It felt like a warning, or perhaps a message. After nearly half an hour, Captain Hugh finally slowed his horse. "My lord," Edric nodded, "we'll stop here." The men gathered inside a small clearing surrounded by enormous fir trees. Snow muffled every sound. The forest seemed impossibly still. Several guards immediately searched the surrounding woods, while the others calmed the frightened horses. One young soldier finally spoke. "They could have killed us." Edric looked toward the empty trail behind them. "Yes. So why didn't they?" No one answered, because no one knew. Captain Hugh removed one of the arrows from his saddlebag. It had lodged harmlessly in the wooden bridge before he pulled it free. He handed it to Edric. "My lord." Edric examined it carefully. The shaft was beautifully made, straight, balanced. The feathers had been trimmed with remarkable precision. This wasn't the work of common bandits. Then he noticed something even stranger. There was no crest, no carved symbol, no colored fletching identifying its owner. Professional soldiers almost always marked their arrows. These had been left completely anonymous, as though whoever fired them wanted to erase every trace of identity. That evening, they reached a small hunting lodge owned by the Crown. It stood alone beside a frozen lake several miles from the nearest village. The caretaker, an elderly widower named Martin, welcomed them inside without asking unnecessary questions. A roaring fire soon filled the single stone hall with warmth. Fresh stew simmered above the hearth, while wet cloaks dried beside the flames. For the first time since leaving the capital, the men allowed themselves to relax. Only Edric remained uneasy. Long after everyone else had gone to sleep, he quietly carried the leather bundle onto the wooden table. He untied the faded cord once again. The documents lay exactly as Roland had arranged them. Royal decrees, ancient maps, land records, letters bearing seals from kings who had died generations earlier. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. He carefully unfolded one parchment that particularly caught his attention. It was older than the others, much older. The ink had faded to a soft brown, but the writing remained remarkably clear. At the bottom appeared the seal of King Alaric III, nearly 140 years earlier.
The decree described several mountain fortresses that had been placed under direct protection of the crown. Among them, Ravenhold. Edric frowned. He had governed the castle for nearly 15 years. He had never seen this document before. The next page revealed something even more surprising. Hidden beneath an official inventory was a short handwritten note added years later. Unlike the formal decree, this message had clearly been written in haste. Its final lines read, "If the kingdom should ever lose its way, the western fortress must remain closed until truth can safely return." There was no explanation, no signature, only those words. Edric read them again. Remain closed. The western fortress. Ravenhold was the western fortress, but closed. Why? He searched through the remaining documents, hoping to find another clue. There wasn't one. Only silence. Sometimes history answered questions. Sometimes it simply left them waiting. The following morning, the snow finally stopped. Bright winter sunlight sparkled across the frozen landscape as the travelers resumed their journey. By late afternoon, familiar mountains began to appear beyond the trees. Home. Captain Hugh smiled for the first time in days. We'll reach Ravenhold before sunset. Edric hoped so. Something deep inside urged him to arrive before darkness. He couldn't explain why. Years of experience had simply taught him to trust quiet instincts. As the castle gradually emerged through the mountain mist, relief washed over every rider. The great stone walls looked exactly as they always had. Smoke drifted from the chimneys. The watchtower banner still fluttered proudly above the highest tower. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until they reached the bridge. The gate was already open. Eleanor stood waiting in the courtyard with Thomas beside her. She smiled the moment she saw Edric. The boy ran across the courtyard before his father had even dismounted. "You promised you'd come home before the deep snow." Edric laughed softly and lifted him into his arms. "And I always try to keep my promises." For a brief moment, the worries of the journey disappeared. He was simply a husband returning home, a father greeting his son, a lord welcomed by the people he trusted most. That evening, after supper, Edric told Eleanor everything. Not every detail, not the documents themselves, but enough for her to understand the danger. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she walked to the narrow window overlooking the valley. The last light of day had almost disappeared. "What will you do?" Edric remained silent for several seconds. Finally, he answered, "I don't think Ravenhold was chosen by chance." "You believe the documents belong here?" "I do." "And the note?" He looked toward the leather bundle resting on the table. "The western fortress must remain closed until truth can safely return." He repeated the words almost in a whisper. "I don't know who wrote them. I don't know why, but I have a feeling. Someone expected this day to come." Outside, the castle bell rang once. A cold wind swept across the mountain. Far below, on the distant road leading into the valley, a single rider stopped under the shadow of the forest. He looked toward Ravenhold for only a moment, then quietly turned his horse around and disappeared into the gathering darkness. Inside the castle, no one noticed him. Not yet. But before many weeks had passed, the great gates of Ravenhold would close, and once they did, an entire century would pass before they opened again.
Snow continued falling for nearly a week after Edric returned to Ravenhold. By then, the castle had settled back into its familiar rhythm. The blacksmith's hammer echoed through the lower courtyard every morning. the kitchens filled with the smell of fresh bread before sunrise. Children practiced reading with the castle chaplain in a small room overlooking the eastern wall. Everything appeared exactly as it always had. Only Edric knew how fragile that ordinary life had become. Every time he looked toward the main gate, he found himself remembering the mysterious horsemen on the mountain ridge. They had never spoken, never attacked, never even revealed who they were. Yet somehow they remained impossible to forget. One cold morning, Captain Hugh entered the Lord's study carrying a small wooden box. It arrived before dawn. Edric looked up. From the capital? I don't know. There was no messenger, no seal, no name. Only the box. It was made from ordinary pine wood, tied shut with rough hemp cord. Nothing about it appeared valuable, which made it even more suspicious. Edric carefully cut the cord. Inside rested only 3 objects: a smooth river stone, a dried sprig of mountain rosemary, and a folded piece of parchment. There was no signature, only a single sentence: "Stone remembers longer than men." Edric read it twice, then a third time. Captain Hugh frowned. What does that mean? I wish I knew. The river stone immediately caught his attention. It wasn't unusual. Thousands of similar stones could be found in streams throughout the mountains, except for one detail. Someone had carved a tiny raven on its surface. Not a detailed carving, only a simple outline, almost invisible unless light struck it at the right angle. Edric turned it slowly in his hand. The raven, the castle's symbol. This message had been intended specifically for Ravenhold. Later that afternoon, Edric climbed to the oldest part of the castle with Master Gilbert, Ravenhold's aging mason. Gilbert had spent nearly 50 years repairing the fortress. If anyone understood its walls, it was him. They walked through narrow passages rarely used anymore. Some staircases had become so worn that the centers of the stone steps curved gently downward after centuries of footsteps. Gilbert smiled. Every stone tells a story. Edric looked at him. Do you truly believe that? The old mason laughed softly. No, but every generation leaves something behind. He rested one weathered hand against the wall. My father repaired this section. My grandfather repaired the tower, and his father helped rebuild the western gate after the great earthquake. He paused. A castle remembers even when people forget. Those words stayed with Edric. Stone remembers longer than men. The strange message suddenly felt less mysterious. Gilbert eventually led him into a forgotten storage chamber beneath the western tower. Dust covered everything. Broken furniture leaned against ancient walls. Old shields hung from wooden beams, their painted emblems almost completely faded. Sunlight entered only through a tiny slit high above the floor. Edric wandered quietly through the room. Then something caught his eye. A carved date. It had been scratched into one of the stone pillars. Year 1187. Beneath it appeared another sentence, almost impossible to read after decades of dust. Gilbert brushed the surface carefully. The words slowly emerged. Guard the gate until the mountain sleeps again. Edric felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. Another message. Another warning, another reference to the gate. Who carved this? Gilbert slowly shook his head. I've seen it for years. I assumed it was only an old mason amusing himself. Edric traced the letters with his fingertips.
No, someone wanted this found, but not immediately. The old mason nodded thoughtfully. Some messages are written for people who haven't been born yet. That evening, Eleanor joined Edric in the castle library. She found him surrounded by maps and old chronicles. Candles burned low beside stacks of dusty books. "You haven't slept." "I will. You said that yesterday." He smiled faintly. She placed a warm cup of tea beside him. "What are you looking for?" "History. You've already read half the library. I'm beginning to think the answer isn't in the books." "Then where?" Edric looked toward the thick stone walls surrounding them. "Perhaps it's in the castle itself." The following morning, he ordered a careful inspection of Ravenhold. Not for enemies, for history. Every tower, every cellar, every forgotten staircase, every sealed room. The soldiers looked puzzled. Captain Hugh finally asked, "We're searching our own castle." "Yes." "For what?" Edric smiled. "I'll know when we find it." For nearly 3 days, nothing appeared unusual. The castle revealed only ordinary things: old barrels, broken furniture, abandoned guard posts, ancient wells that had dried up long ago. Life continued as normal, until Thomas made an unexpected discovery. The young boy had been chasing the castle cat through the western corridor when he noticed a cold draft coming from behind a faded tapestry. Curious, he pushed the heavy carpet aside. Hidden beneath centuries of dust was a narrow wooden door, so perfectly built into the stone wall that almost nobody noticed it anymore. Thomas ran through the corridor as fast as he could. "Father," Edric looked up from the library table. "I found something." Children often believed they'd discovered secret passages. Most turned out to be broom closets. Still, something in Thomas's voice sounded different. Edric followed him through the western hallway. The old tapestry hung exactly where he'd left it. Behind it, the narrow wooden door waited silently. Its iron handle had turned almost black with age. Above the frame, barely visible beneath layers of dust, someone had carved a single raven, exactly like the one on the mysterious riverstone. Edric slowly reached for the handle. The door had not been opened for a very, very long time.
The iron handle felt colder than the winter air outside. For a brief moment, Lord Edric simply rested his hand against it. He wasn't afraid. Not exactly. It was something quieter than fear. A feeling that once the door opened, the castle would never seem quite the same again. Thomas stood beside him, barely able to hide his excitement. "Do you think it's a secret tunnel?" Edric smiled. "It could be. Or perhaps it's only an old storage room." The boy shook his head immediately. "It isn't." "How do you know?" "Because nobody dusts secret storage rooms." Even Eleanor couldn't help smiling. Captain Hugh arrived moments later with 2 lanterns. Master Gilbert followed close behind, leaning heavily on his walking stick. "I've repaired these walls for nearly 50 years, the old mason murmured. "I never knew this door existed." Edric carefully pushed the handle downward. Nothing happened. The mechanism refused to move. Gilbert knelt beside the frame. "It's locked. Can we force it?" The old mason examined the hinges. "We probably could, but these doors weren't meant to be broken." He brushed away another layer of dust. Near the bottom corner appeared a tiny circular opening, hardly larger than a coin. Gilbert frowned. "Interesting." The opening wasn't meant for a key. It was too shallow, too wide. Edric reached into his pocket almost without thinking. The smooth river stone, the one that had arrived inside the mysterious wooden box. He turned it slowly beneath the lantern light. Its size, its shape, almost matched the opening perfectly. Captain Hugh looked at him. "You don't actually believe." Edric gently pressed the carved stone into the circular space. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then came a quiet sound. Click. Deep inside the wall, ancient gears shifted for the first time in generations. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. The heavy lock slowly released. Thomas's eyes grew wide. It worked! Gilbert whispered almost to himself. "My grandfather once told me that old castles sometimes remembered their builders." No one laughed. The wooden door opened inward with surprising ease. Beyond it lay a narrow stone passage, not a tunnel leading underground, a corridor, long, straight, silent. Its walls were smoother than the rest of the castle, built with extraordinary precision. Small openings high above allowed faint daylight to enter, though they were nearly invisible from outside. Someone had designed this place carefully, very carefully. Captain Hugh lifted his lantern. "I'll go first." Edric shook his head. "No. If there's danger, there won't be." "How can you know?" Edric looked down the empty corridor. "Because whoever built this expected someone to find it." Their footsteps echoed softly against ancient stone. The air smelled dry, not abandoned, preserved, as though the corridor had patiently waited for centuries. Every 20 or 30 steps, another carved raven appeared on the wall, always facing forward, always pointing deeper inside. Thomas noticed first. "They're showing us the way." Edric nodded. "I believe they are." After several minutes, the corridor opened into a circular chamber hidden inside the western tower itself. Unlike the forgotten storage rooms below, this place remained astonishingly clean. Dust covered the floor, but the walls were untouched. In the center stood a massive oak table. Around it rested 6 stone chairs, each carved from a single block of granite. On the wall opposite the entrance hung an enormous map of the northern mountains, not painted, carved directly into the stone itself. Every river, every village, every pass, even Ravenhold. Gilbert slowly approached the map. "I've never seen anything like this." Neither had Edric. Near the carved map stood a narrow wooden cabinet. Its doors remained closed. Above them, someone had carved another short sentence. "Truth survives only where memory is protected." Edric opened the cabinet carefully. Inside rested dozens of leather-bound journals, perfectly arranged, dry, untouched. Each spine carried only the year: 1123, 1124, 1125, 1126, 1127, 1128, 1129, and many more. Each book for nearly every generation. Eleanor looked at the shelves in amazement. Someone kept records for centuries. Edric gently removed the oldest journal. Its leather cracked softly as he opened the first page. The handwriting had faded, but remained readable. The opening sentence stopped everyone. "If you are reading these pages, the kingdom has once again entered dangerous times." Silence filled the chamber. The journal wasn't a diary, it was a guide. Each generation of Ravenhold's guardians had added new pages. They described wars, famines, royal successions, border disputes,
But more importantly, they described mistakes, how kingdoms slowly weakened, how corruption spread unnoticed, how truth disappeared whenever records were altered. Again and again, one message repeated itself: protect knowledge before protecting stone. Edred closed the book gently. He finally understood. Ravenhold had never been important because of its walls. It had been important because of what those walls quietly protected. As they prepared to leave the hidden chamber, Thomas noticed one final object resting beneath the great stone map, a small wooden chest. Unlike everything else in the room, this one wasn't dusty. Someone had opened it, not recently, but certainly within the last few years. Edric knelt beside it. Inside lay only one folded letter, no seal, no name, just a single line written in dark ink. When the black banner rises in the north, close the gates before sunset. Captain Hugh looked toward the narrow windows. Outside, the winter sky had begun growing strangely dark, and far beyond the valley, a rider was already climbing the mountain road, carrying a banner no one inside Ravenhold had yet seen.
The rider reached the outer bridge just before sunset. His horse was exhausted. Foam covered its neck, and every breath came in short, desperate bursts. Snow clung to the animal's mane, while its rider leaned forward, barely able to remain in the saddle. The guards recognized him immediately. It was Matthew, one of Ravenhold's own scouts. Captain Hugh hurried across the courtyard before the man had even dismounted. "Matthew!" The scout slid from the saddle, nearly collapsing onto the frozen stones. "I need to see Lord Edric. Now." Within moments, Matthew stood beside the great fireplace in the castle hall, warming his trembling hands around a wooden cup of hot broth. His face was pale from the cold. His cloak had been torn by low branches somewhere in the mountains. Edric waited patiently. He had learned long ago that exhausted men often remembered details more clearly after food and warmth. Finally, Matthew looked up. "My lord, I found them." "The riders?" Matthew nodded. "And much more." A large map of the northern valleys was spread across the council table. Matthew pointed toward a narrow mountain pass east of Ravenhold. "I followed them for 2 days. They never entered any town. They avoided every village. They camped only in abandoned places." Captain Hugh frowned. "Bandits?" Matthew slowly shook his head. "No, they're disciplined. They travel like soldiers, but they wear no crest, no family colors, no royal banner, no markings at all. Exactly as Edric had expected. There were 12 of them at first. Then, the second night, another group joined them. How many? I counted at least 30. The room fell silent. 30 armed riders moving through the mountains without identifying themselves was no ordinary event. Edric studied the map. "Did they notice you?" "I don't think so. What were they doing?" Matthew hesitated. "They weren't searching villages. They were searching roads." Captain Hugh was puzzled. "Roads?" Matthew nodded. "They measured bridges. They examined old milestones. They even copied markings carved into ancient stone." Edric exchanged a quick glance with Eleanor. The forgotten Roman roads, the old mountain passes, the hidden routes. Someone wasn't searching for people. They were searching for much older. Matthew reached into his satchel. "I brought this." He placed a rough sketch on the table. It showed an old stone marker standing beside one of the mountain roads.
Someone had recently uncovered it from beneath snow and moss. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Then Edric noticed the carving. A raven. And beneath it, another image. A gate. Closed. Captain Hugh whispered. The same symbol. Edric nodded slowly. They found another marker. That evening, after Matthew had been given a room to rest, Edric returned alone to the hidden chamber inside the western tower. The journals lay exactly where he had left them. One by one, he opened the oldest volumes again. Hours passed. Most pages described ordinary history: harvests, floods, royal marriages, small border disputes. Nothing explained the carved ravens, nothing mentioned mysterious riders. Then, near the end of a journal dated 1187, he found a paragraph written in noticeably darker ink, perhaps added years later. The signs beyond the valley must never all be discovered together. He read the sentence twice. The signs, plural. Not one marker, many. He turned the page. A simple map had been drawn by hand. Tiny ravens marked different locations across the northern mountains. Old bridges, ancient watchtowers, forgotten Roman roads, ruined monasteries, stone circles. There were 12 symbols in total. Ravenhold stood at the center. He quietly counted them again. 12. Matthew had first seen 12 riders. A coincidence? Perhaps, but Edric no longer believed much in coincidence. The next morning, Master Gilbert joined him inside the chamber. The old mason adjusted his spectacles before studying the carved mountain map. I've repaired castles all my life, but this was never built only as a fortress. Edric nodded. What do you think it was? Gilbert slowly traced one finger between the carved ravens. A network. For what purpose? I don't know, but every road seems connected. He paused, almost as though messages once traveled through these mountains without ever passing through the capital. Edric looked again. Gilbert was right. Every ancient road led eventually not directly to Ravenhold, but toward it. That afternoon, Thomas wandered through the snowy courtyard carrying a loaf of fresh bread toward the stable. Halfway there, he noticed something unusual. A raven had landed on the old stone well. It wasn't afraid, it simply watched him. When Thomas stepped closer, the bird flew away. Not far, only to another wall, then another, almost as if it wanted him to follow. Curious, the boy did exactly that. The raven eventually stopped beside the oldest section of the outer wall. There, hidden beneath climbing ivy and winter frost, Thomas noticed another carving. A raven, and beneath it, 3 tiny circles. He brushed away the snow. The circles weren't decoration. They marked directions. North, east, west. One circle had been scratched through long ago. 2 remained untouched. Thomas stared for a moment, trying to understand. Then he ran back towards the keep. When Edric saw the carving, his expression changed immediately. Where did you find this? Thomas pointed toward the wall. The bird showed me. Captain Hugh smiled politely. A lucky coincidence. Edric wasn't so certain. He carefully compared the carving with the map from the hidden chamber. Then he quietly whispered. There were 12 markers. How many remain? No one knew. Because no one knew. Outside, the winter wind swept across Ravenhold's towers. Far beyond the valley, hidden among snow-covered forests, unknown riders continued moving from one forgotten landmark to another. Whatever they were searching for, they were getting closer. And for the first time, Edric began to suspect that closing the castle gates might not simply protect what was inside. It might also prevent someone from reaching what had been hidden beneath Ravenhold for centuries.
The sound of the gates closing echoed across the valley like distant thunder. 24 men leaned their shoulders against the enormous oak doors, while others guided the thick iron beams into place. Chains that had not been used in decades groaned as they tightened, and one by one, the ancient locks settled into their stone housings. The final bar slid into place with a deep, heavy thud. Silence followed. For the first time in anyone's memory, Ravenhold was closed. Not for a storm, not for a siege, not for a single night, but for a reason almost no one inside the castle fully understood. The villagers in the valley noticed immediately. From their homes, they could see the castle gates standing firmly shut, even though no army had appeared. People began whispering to one another. Had war begun? Had the king died? Was sickness spreading through the mountains? No one knew. Yet something about the closed gates made even ordinary conversations quieter. Children stopped asking why the drawbridge remained raised. The adults had no answers to give. Lord Edric gathered everyone in the great hall before sunset. Soldiers stood beside cooks. Stable boys stood beside blacksmiths. Servants, scribes, masons, healers, and priests all waited together beneath the tall timber roof. Edric looked around the hall before speaking. His voice remained calm. "We are not prisoners." No one moved. "We are guardians." He allowed the words to settle. This castle was not closed because we fear the world. It was closed because something entrusted to us must survive the world. The room remained silent. Many people still didn't understand, but they trusted the man speaking to them. Sometimes trust arrived before understanding. Food stores were carefully counted during the following days. The castle had always prepared for long winters. Its underground granaries contained barley, oats, dried beans, smoked meat, salted fish, honey, cheese, and enough grain to bake bread for many months. The wells inside the walls remained full. The herb gardens had been preserved beneath glass frames. Firewood filled nearly every storage room. Ravenhold had not merely been built to impress visitors. It had been built to endure. Master Gilbert smiled as workers inspected the ancient cisterns beneath the courtyard. "Our ancestors thought of everything." Edric quietly replied, "I hope they did." Life gradually settled into a new routine. The gates stayed closed, yet the castle itself remained full of life. Children still attended lessons every morning. The chapel bells still rang at sunrise. Bread still baked before dawn. The blacksmith still repaired farm tools as often as swords. Shepherds continued caring for sheep kept inside sheltered winter fields. The strange thing was, after several weeks, the closed gates almost began feeling normal. Human beings adapted remarkably quickly, even to extraordinary circumstances. Brother Lucas spent much of his time helping Aldrich organize the growing collection of journals. Together, they copied fragile pages onto fresh parchment, carefully preserving records that were already beginning to fade with age. One evening, Thomas wandered into the library carrying a candle. "What are you writing?" Brother Lucas smiled. "The future." Thomas laughed. "It looks like the past." The monk nodded gently. "It always does." Meanwhile, Captain Hugh strengthened the castle's defenses.
not because he expected immediate attack, because uncertainty demanded preparation. Watch schedules doubled, signal fires were repaired, old arrow stores were inspected, even forgotten tunnels beneath the eastern wall were carefully mapped. Every stone of Ravenhold seemed almost alive, as though generations of builders had quietly prepared for this very moment. Several weeks passed without incident. No army appeared, no messenger arrived, no black banners were seen again. Some soldiers began to wonder if they had overreacted. Perhaps the mysterious riders had simply disappeared. Perhaps the danger had passed. Even Eleanor gently asked Edric one evening, "Do you ever question your decision?" He looked toward the snow-covered valley beyond the narrow window. "Every day." "Then why keep the gates closed?" "Because if I am wrong, people will call me cautious. And if I am right..." He never finished the sentence. He didn't need to. Near the end of winter, Matthew returned from the highest watchtower just before dawn. He spoke quietly. "My lord, they're here." Edric immediately climbed the tower. Far below, tiny fires glowed across the valley. Not one camp, many, scattered carefully among the forests. Someone had arrived during the night without making noise. As daylight slowly spread across the mountains, dark figures became visible moving between the trees. Not charging, not surrounding the castle. Watching, waiting, patiently. Captain Hugh counted silently. 30, 40, perhaps more. Edric said nothing. His attention rested elsewhere. At the center of the distant camp stood a single black banner, perfectly still in the morning air. Hours later, something unexpected happened. One rider left the camp alone. He carried no weapon in his hands, only a white cloth tied to a long wooden staff, a sign of peaceful conversation. The rider stopped well beyond bow range. He never approached the gate. Instead, he planted the white staff into the frozen ground, hung a leather satchel beneath it, turned his horse around, and quietly rode back toward the forest, without speaking a single word. Captain Hugh looked toward Edric. A trap? Perhaps. What should we do? Edric watched the lonely leather satchel standing untouched in the snow. For several long moments, no one moved. Finally, he spoke. "We wait until sunset." The captain looked surprised. Why? Because patient men rarely lose to impatient ones. As the winter sun slowly crossed the sky, the small leather satchel remained alone in the valley below. Whatever message it carried, Lord Edric had the uneasy feeling it would finally explain why strangers crossed mountains, searched forgotten roads, uncovered ancient markers, and why Ravenhold was chosen centuries earlier to become the one castle whose gates would remain closed for 100 years.
Spring arrived quietly in the mountains. The snow that had covered the valley for months slowly melted into clear streams, filling the rivers with cold water rushing down from the peaks. Wildflowers began appearing beside the old Roman road, birds returned to the forests, and the air once again carried the familiar scent of pine and fresh earth. Beyond Ravenhold's walls, nature continued exactly as it always had. Inside the castle, time seemed different. The gates remained closed. No merchant entered, no traveler departed. The world beyond the walls had become something observed rather than visited. As the sun reached its highest point that afternoon, Lord Edric finally gave a quiet order. "Bring me the satchel." Captain Hugh chose 2 of his most trusted guards.
the heavy gate opened only wide enough for 3 horses to pass. For the first time in months, fresh air from beyond the walls swept into the courtyard. The guards rode silently to the place where the leather satchel still waited beneath the white staff. No one stopped them. The mysterious camp on the distant ridge remained completely still. Within minutes, they returned. The gates closed once again. The great iron bars slid back into place. Everyone gathered inside the library. Edric carefully untied the weathered leather straps. Inside, there was no gold, no weapon, no royal command. Only a single book. Its leather cover had almost completely faded with age. Across the front, written in careful Latin, appeared the title, The Chronicle of the 12 Keepers. Brother Lucas immediately stepped forward. "I've heard of this." "You have?" "Only in stories. We believed every copy had been destroyed." Edric slowly opened the first page. A folded letter slipped onto the table. Unlike every mysterious message before it, this one carried a signature. Roland, the Chancellor. Edric unfolded the letter carefully. The handwriting was weaker than before, as though written by an old man whose strength was fading. It read, "My friend, if this letter has reached you, then events have unfolded exactly as I feared. The men searching the mountains do not seek treasure, they seek certainty. They understand that whoever controls the past will eventually control the future. They have burned monasteries, altered records, erased names, and destroyed archives. Yet they failed to find the one place our predecessors trusted above every other, Ravenhold. If you are reading this, then you have already discovered the hidden chamber. Good. Now hear my final request. Do not defend the castle because it is strong. Defend it because memory has no sword of its own. When the world forgets the truth, let Ravenhold remember. Your friend, Roland." No one spoke for several minutes. Even the crackling fireplace seemed unusually quiet. Brother Lucas gently opened the chronicle. Inside were names, hundreds of them. Every keeper, every generation, every guardian stretching back nearly 3 centuries. The first name had been written by a monk, the second by a Roman surveyor. Later came castle lords, scholars, engineers, priests, scribes, and ordinary villagers. Different lives, one promise. Protect the truth. Not power, not wealth, truth. Edric slowly turned another page. Near the end, one blank space remained. Waiting. Thomas looked up. "Why is there an empty page?" Brother Lucas smiled softly. "Because history wasn't finished." Edric rested his hand upon the book. "No, it still isn't." He dipped a feather quill into fresh ink. Carefully, slowly, he wrote, "Edric Ravenwood, Keeper of Ravenhold." Then, beneath his own name, he left another empty line for whoever would come after him. The weeks became months. The mysterious riders never attacked. Instead, they eventually disappeared into the mountains exactly as they had arrived. No battle was fought, no castle wall was broken, no sword decided the future of Ravenhold. Time did.
Seasons passed. Children became adults. Adults grew old. The journals inside the hidden chamber continued growing thicker. Generation after generation added another chapter. The gates remained closed, not because the people inside feared the outside world, but because some promises deserved patience. 100 years later, a young traveler climbed the same mountain road on a bright spring morning. He had grown up hearing stories about Ravenhold. Some claimed the castle had been abandoned. Others insisted ghosts guarded its walls. Most believed the old fortress was empty. As he reached the bridge, something unexpected happened. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the great oak gates began to open. The sound echoed across the valley exactly as it had a century before. The young traveler stepped through in silence. Inside, the castle looked remarkably unchanged. The stone walls still stood proudly. The chapel bell still overlooked the valley. Wildflowers still bloomed beneath the western tower. An elderly monk greeted him with a warm smile. "You've come a long way." "I have." "What brings you here?" The traveler looked around the peaceful courtyard before answering. "I came looking for history." The old monk nodded. "Then you've come to the right place." Today, no one knows whether a place exactly like Ravenhold ever existed. History often leaves us with fragments instead of complete answers. A ruined wall, an old road, a forgotten journal, a weathered stone carved with a symbol whose meaning has long been lost. Perhaps somewhere in the mountains of Europe, an abandoned castle still waits quietly above the trees. Perhaps beneath its oldest tower, a hidden room still protects stories no one has read for centuries. Or perhaps the greatest lesson of Ravenhold has nothing to do with castles at all. It is simply this: stone may survive for hundreds of years, but only people can choose to remember. And sometimes, the quiet decision to protect the truth becomes the greatest legacy anyone leaves behind. As evening settles over the mountains, the old castle stands in peaceful silence once again. The wind moves gently through the pine trees. The chapel bell rings one final time. And somewhere beyond the valley, the ancient road continues toward the horizon, waiting for the next traveler willing to slow down, listen carefully, and remember.